Hey guys, it's Kaylor. Welcome to the YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be coding the blog website that we made in part 1. If you guys missed that, there's a previous video link in the description. Click on that. That'll take you to that video and you can watch and design this with me. So after you've done that, load up your favorite text editor and download the project file in the description. It's going to have an images folder with everything you need, all the icons exported from Adobe XD for you, and it's going to have the index and main CSS files in there and ready to go. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to start with the navigation, and then we're just going to work our way down this entire page until we have it fully coded. So let's get started. The simplest way to do this video, I think, is just to start with one section of code, write the HTML, then follow that up with the CSS, and then move on to the next section. So let's start with the general HTML stuff first. So let's add the doc type, HTML, and we're going to open our HTML tag. Our head tag goes next inside of that. Inside of here, we're going to do a title, and I'm just going to call this blog it. I think that's the name that we use for the blog. Below here, we're going to need a meta tag for the character set of UTF-8. We're going to need a link for our style sheet. So I'm going to say rel style sheet of type text/CSS and then href main CSS. Below that, we're going to go into the body. So let's get out of the head and go body. Here's what our navigation looks like. We have a logo, we have this grouping right here, this menu and this category, and we have this grouping of the search and the magnifying glass, and then we have these two icons over here on the right. So I went ahead and clicked the live preview button here, and this is what our blog is looking like. You'll see we have our title. I'm just going to drag this over just a little bit more. So we're just going to start the section with a div with a class of nav. And inside of that, I'm going to open up another div. And this one's going to have a class of nav wrapper. So pretty much every section we start in this is going to have its own wrapper so we can get a nice margin on each side. Inside of here, we're going to first do an A tag, then href, and I'm going to pound symbol that out. Inside of the A tag, I'm going to open an image tag, and I'm going to link that to images and then the blog it logo. You can also set an alt tag, and I'm going to call it blog it image. Below that, we're going to start by adding a tag. I'm going to do the same thing, href, pound symbol it out. And then inside there, this time, we're going to do a div tag with a class of menu. Inside of this menu, we're going to have two things. The first is going to be an image with a source of images, and this is going to be the menu icon. You can add an alt tag of that to menu icon. Outside of the image tag, we're going to have a p tag, and this is going to be for our categories text. So we can paste that in. So that's everything that's going to go on the left of our navigation. Now for the stuff on the right. So I'm going to add a div called class of right, and we're going to use this later on in the footer as well. And inside of here, I'm going to have an A with an href, pound symbol it out. We're going to do another div this time. And this one's going to have a class of search. So this is going to be for the search icon and the search text. First up this time is the text. I'll do a p tag and put search in there. And following that up with an image tag with a source of images, search icon. Then I'm going to add an alt tag and just say search icon. After that A tag, we're going to have our bell for our notifications. I'm going to give this a ahref, pound symbol that out. And on this A tag, I'm going to give this a class of nav icon. We're going to use this for spacing later on. So inside of this A tag, we're going to do an image with a source of bell icon. Last thing we need in here is our profile icon. So I'm going to do another A tag with an href and pound symbol it out. Do the image tag, source, images. It's going to be profile icon. And I'm going to also add my alt tags to these images. Let's do bell icon to this one. And do an alt tag here. And we'll call this profile icon. So this is what we have so far. So let's get into the CSS. For the CSS, just like the HTML, we got to do the general stuff first. I'm going to do kind of like a browser reset here, and I'm going to set the margin to 0, the padding to 0, border to 0, outline to 0, and then we're going to set the font size to 100%, vertically align to baseline, and then the background is going to be transparent. And this selects everything in the document, by the way, just in case you've never done this. And I'm going to add a ton of spacing just so we can scroll through this a little bit. I'll delete that later. The HTML, we just need to set the font family. So I'm going to set that to Proxima Nova. And since I am on a local host, this is going to work. If you're actually going to put this on a website, you're going to need to do this another way, like Typekit, or you're going to need to embed this. So if that's not available, I'm going to put sans serif. And let's set up some font sizing. So H1, I'm going to set the font size on this to 40 pixels. Then we're going to skip over the H2 and just set the H3. And I'm going to set the font size on this one to 26 pixels. And then for our body font, I'm going to set the font size on that one to just 20 pixels. On this one, I'm also going to lower the font weight to 200 so it's not too bold and it looks similar to what we have in our design. We're also going to be using a few things later that's going to be blue, and we're also going to be using one called bold. So these two things are going to be used later in span tags for selecting certain text and making them blue or bold. So I'm going to set the color in blue to 1F9 8FF, and then in bold I'm going to set the font weight to 500 instead of 200. Now that we've got that done with, let's go ahead and work on this nav. So I'm going to say .nav width is going to be 100%, and the .nav wrapper, I'm going to set the width to 80%, and I'm going to add a margin of auto. That way we have that applied on both sides. Also, let's go ahead and set the height of the .nav class. So height, and we're going to set this to 110 pixels. I'm going to select my text in the nav wrapper. So .nav wrapper A. I'm going to float it to the left. I'm going to set the margin on top only to 3 EM. And I'm going to get rid of that ugly text decoration and set it to none. I'm going to target the information that goes on the right. So we're using that right class here that holds these three things. And I'm going to float that to the right. Now I'm going to select the .menu and the .search classes that we made. Those are the groupings for the icons and the text. I'm going to set display to flex. And I'm going to align the items, not content, align items to center. After that, I'm going to target the .menu image. I'm going to apply a margin to the right side and do 10 pixels. Then I'm going to target the .search image this time, and the margin is going to be to the left 10 pixels. So we have the spacing in between each of the icons. Now I'm going to target the .menu ptext and the .search ptext. I'm going to set the color on this to the nice gray color we're using in the design, which is 65747E. I'm also going to set the font size on this to 26 pixels. On the .menu class itself now, I'm going to apply some spacing so we can get that away from the Blogit logo. And I'm going to set that to a margin left of 50 pixels. Now we're going to do the same thing to the search, except we're going to apply this margin to the right 50 pixels. So that's going to get it away from these icons over here. Now we need some spacing between those two icons on the right. So I'm going to target that .nav icon class that we have right here, which is on the bell icon. And I'm going to set the margin right to 30 pixels. And this is what it looks like. The next section I'm going to start is going to be called image section. And this is in a div. And then inside of that div, I'm going to give it a class of image section wrapper. Also need to take this extra G out. I don't know why that's on there. And then inside of here, I'm going to create another div, and I'm going to give this one a class of blog post info. I'm going to start by adding my title, so I'm going to use H1. Let's quickly paste that in. Below that, we're going to have another div with a class of info. Inside here, I'm going to do a p tag, and I'm just going to say by space span. And I'm going to use that class we made earlier called blue, just to change the text color. I'm going to put the author's name in, which is my name. And then I'm doing another space, and then put another span in. And this one's going to have a class of bold. And it's going to have the 2 days ago timestamp on it. And that is that line done. Now I'm going to create one last p tag and paste in some text. My text has a break tag, which is just BR here after the. That's just so it breaks right at the point that my design does. It's not necessary if you don't want it there. Now for the CSS of this section, we're going to first set the image section width to 100%. Then we're going to adjust the wrapper, so image section wrapper. And I'm going to set the width on this one to 80%. And then the margin to auto. I'm going to display this as a block so we can adjust the height of this. I'll set the height to 800 pixels. The background image URL images is going to be this David, not sure how to say the last name. I get all my images from unsplash.com, and when you download them, they have the name of the user and a number next to them. So that's why they're named that, if you're wondering. Next, we're going to do background position center. Background size is going to be cover. And then make sure it doesn't repeat, so we'll do background repeat, no repeat. And I'm also going to set a position of relative to this because we're going to be using an absolute positioning on this text. That's why we created this blog post info div tag. So we're going to target that now, so blog post info. And I'm going to say position absolute, and then to get it to the bottom, I'm going to say bottom 0. So that's going to put it down here at the bottom of this block that we just created. I'm now going to target my image section wrapper H1. I'm going to set the color on this to white. The background color is going to be a blue-black color. The code on that is 1C2329. I'm also going to set the width of this to a fixed 680 pixels. I'm going to text align this to the center. I'm also going to add some padding of 0.25 EM. For aesthetic purposes, I'm going to apply an opacity of 0.97, just so you can slightly see through it. Now I'm going to apply a border radius of 2 pixels, and then a margin of 0, 0, 20 pixels, negative 60 pixels. For the .info class, it's going to be basically the same thing. So I'm just going to copy it, paste it in. We're going to remove the text align center. I'm going to change the margin to 40 and negative 30. And then the padding, I'm going to make that 0.25 EM, 0.25 EM, 0.25 EM, 3 EM. Now I'm going to target the .info P, and I'm going to set the margin to 15 pixels and then 0. And that is it for this section. Now for the content section of the website. The content section is going to have the main text on the left, and then it's going to have a little sidebar on the right. That's only going to have our social icons in it, but it would be room for ads usually. So I'm going to start with a div called content. And under that, I'm going to have another div with a class of content wrapper, just like we've been doing. Now inside of this, we're going to have 2 divs. One's for the main content, so I'm going to call this one main content. And then the one below that, we're going to call sidebar. just like that. So inside of each of these, I'm going to add 2 break tags. This is just for spacing, just to make sure it looks exactly like my design. But you don't have to add this if you don't want. So I'm going to put 2 of those in here. All right. So now inside of main content, below our break tags, we're going to start actually putting the blog posts in here. So I'm going to put a P tag. I'm going to have an overview paragraph. So I'm going to paste that in first. So in my P tag, there that goes. And then after that, we're going to need the heading for the first tip. So H1. And this is going to be number 1, orbit shot. Below that, I'm going to have 2 paragraphs. So I'm going to put a P tag, paste in some text. And then for variety, I'm going to paste in a little bit of different lorem ipsum for the second paragraph in this section. And now we're on to tip 2. So I'm going to say H1. And this is going to be tip number 2, and this is go slow. This section is going to have a little bit of text, an image, and then a big paragraph of text. Put that in. Now below this, we're going to have our image, source, and this image is going to be the one called Ian Baldwin. And I'm going to give it an alt tag of drone control image. And now below that, we're going to put another P tag and paste in a paragraph. Now I'm just going to highlight from this H1 on the second point all the way down to the end of this P tag, copy it, and go down below and paste it in. I'm going to change this one to 3 and rename this one parallax. And I'm going to change my image to Andrew. And then I'm going to change this to parallax image in the alt tag. So now what we need to do is still inside the main content. We need to add the tags and related section. So I'm going to do that by just saying H3 and putting tags. And below this H3, we're going to put a div with a class of tags. And then I'm just going to paste in a P tag each one of my tags. So the first one's going to be drone, and then I'm just going to duplicate this and put the next one in. Okay, so I put all of them on one line just to make it a little easier to see. And then below this, we're going to put a H3, and this one's going to be called related. And then we're going to do the same thing. Below it, we're going to put a div with a class of related. Now inside of this one, we're going to have a few different things. The first one, we're going to have a div with a class of related child. This is going to be the grouping of the image and the text. So if we look at the design, in the related section, we have an image on the left, and then we have the text and information on the right. So this entire section right here is the child, and this is another child. So inside of the child, we're going to have 2 things. We're going to have a div with a class of related left, and this is where our image goes on the left. So inside that, I'm going to put my image, source, images, and this one is Alexander Wang. On the alt tag on this one, I'm just going to do camera image. And that's all we need in related left. Outside of that, but inside the related child, we're going to say div, class, related, right. Now here's where our information goes in. So the first thing we're going to need is what the related article's name is. So I'm going to put H3, copy that over. Below it, we need who it's by. So I'm going to put by Clifford Baldwin. I'm going to put a span tag. And on this span tag, I'm going to give it the class of bold we've been using. And then the 2 days ago timestamp. Below that, we need a P tag for a little description. Paste that in. And then we need the read more link. I'm going to do that with an A tag, href, pound symbol that out. And then I'm going to put a P tag in here. And inside of that, I'm going to put a span. And I'm going to put read more. Now on the span, I'm going to give that a class of blue, so we don't have to change this in any other way. And right there, it's automatically blue text for us. Okay, so now that we've done that, all we have to do is select related child. Brackets already tells me where the indiv is. I'm going to copy that. Go down below it, hit enter, and then paste it in. So then we just change the title and the rest of the information. So this one is by Mary Santos. The image is now different, so I'm going to change that. I'm going to change this image to dose media. So that's it for the main content. Let's go into the sidebar. And the sidebar is really simple. We just need a few things, and they're basically copies of each other. So I'm going to open an image tag up inside of an A tag, and this is going to have a source of images, Facebook color icon, and then outside of that, I'm going to add an alt tag and say Facebook link. And duplicate this 4 times, and on the second one, I'm going to change this one to Twitter. Third one's going to be Pinterest, and the last one is going to be Google+. You'll see them down here. And so now I just need to change the alt tags on these to Twitter, Pinterest, and Google+. And that's it for everything beside the footer. And since the footer is almost identical to the sidebar, we're going to go ahead and add it in, and then we'll just do all the rest of the CSS at once. So I'm going to say div class footer right above the closing body tag. Inside of that, we're going to need our wrapper for the div. So div class footer wrapper. And inside of here, first thing I'm going to do is put the copyright information. So I'm going to copy that over. Below that, I'm going to put a div, and this is going to be a class of right. So we've already coded this. This was used in the navigation, so it's automatically going to float these links to the right. I'm going to duplicate these links up here, paste them in, and all I have to do is change these to Facebook icon instead of color icon, and that is it. So that's all the HTML for the website. You can see down here, those icons are in here. Let's go ahead and finish up the CSS. I'm going to target the content to start off with, and we're going to set the width to 100%. Next, I'm going to target the content wrapper, and the width on this is going to be 80%, and then we're also going to set the margin to auto. So now we have those nice margins. And here we're also going to set the display to flex. So that's going to affect the main content div tag and the sidebar div tag, since they're directly inside of the content wrapper. So we're going to target those now, so main content. And we're going to set this a flex of 3. So it's going to be 3 times larger than the sidebar, so we're going to set the sidebar to a flex of 1. We're also going to say margin top 30 pixels. That's to get the tops of the icons that are going to be over here and the top of this text to line up perfectly. And I'm going to set the text alignment to the right since it's on the right hand side. So now we're going to target the main content p tags. On these, we're going to start setting the spacing to get this to actually look like a blog post. So the first thing I'm going to do is margin top of 30 pixels, margin bottom of 30 pixels. I'm going to set the color on this to our gray we've been using, so 65747E. And then I'm also going to set the line height on this to 40 pixels to add some spacing into the text. So right there, we've added the spacing here, and we've also made the paragraphs a little bit easier to read. If I can get up here where you can see it, as you'll see, they're not so bunched up together here. And we have this spacing. So we're going to be making the spacing in between the bottom of a section and the next heading a little bit larger and not so uniform, so you can actually tell what's going on here. So let's go ahead and work on that now. So I'm going to target the main content H1 tags now. And the H1 tags need a margin top of 75 pixels. So that's how we're going to tell where the bottom of a section is. We're just going to be using the title. So we're adding that extra space with the title here. I'm also going to do the same thing since we used a H3 tag for the tags and related section. So we're going to say main content, H3, margin top, 75 pixels. So that's going to be applied to these as well. And then let's also adjust our images because they're too big. So dot main content image, we're going to set these at 90%. So width, 90%. Here's what it's looking like so far. So we've got our sidebar appearing where it's supposed to. These are evenly matched at the top. We've got some nice spacing here and here. and the images are the correct size they need to be to look right. Now we need to style the tags, the related, and then the footer. For the tag section, we're just going to have to adjust one thing. So I'm going to say dot tags p. So all the text is what we're targeting. And I'm going to say display of inline block. I'm going to set a margin on these of 30 pixels by 10 pixels, 0, and then 10 pixels. Then we're going to apply a background color of a light gray, which is going to be E4 EAEF. Then I'm going to apply a border radius to get that round. I'm going to set that to 100 pixels. And then we need some padding to make this look a little bit better. 0.1 EM to the top and the bottom, and then 2 EM on the left and the right should do nicely. So now our tags look like that. For the related section, we're going to have to do a few things. First, I'm going to target the related child. I'm going to set the margin top to 30 pixels. Display of flex. So that's going to affect the related left and the related right now. And then we're going to align the items center. I'm going to select the related child's H3 now. Because we added some spacing, some margin to these H3s here, and we don't want that down here in the related section, so I'm just going to set the margin to 0 to overwrite that. After that, we're going to grab the related child and the P tag. I'm going to adjust the margins on these to 0, 0, 5 pixels, 0, and the line height to 30 pixels. Now we're going to grab the link, so related child A, and I'm going to set the text decoration on that to none. So now we need the left side and the right side of the related section to be equal, so we're going to do that by saying related left, comma, related right, and then set them to flex 1. So now we have this. One more thing needs to be done. I'm going to grab the related section itself, so dot related, and I'm going to set a margin on the bottom to 100 pixels. That's just to get some separation between that and the footer. Lastly, let's adjust the footer. So footer, I'm going to set the height to the same thing that we did on the navigation, 110 pixels. I'm going to also set the width to 100%. And the line height is going to be 110 pixels, so everything gets centered up. For the footer wrapper, we're going to make sure we have 80% width. And the margin is auto. Now I'm going to select the footer wrapper and the P tag. Set the color of that to our gray 65747E. And then we're going to float it to the left. Last thing we have to do is select the footer wrapper image, and that is all of our icons. I'm going to set the margin on those to 15 pixels, and then vertically align them to the middle. And that is all for this design to code for a blog website. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a really long one, so if you watched the entire thing, thank you for watching. If you did like this video, let me know by giving it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more UI related content, and as always, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.